What are you silently tolerating that's slowly destroying your peace? Most people never stop to ask that. They move through life brushing things off, letting things slide, telling themselves, it's not that big of a deal. But deep down, there's a quiet discomfort, a growing weight on the chest, a silent frustration that builds every time they let something pass that should have been confronted, every time they smile when they're actually hurt, every time they say it's fine when it's not. The truth is, we're not taught to protect our boundaries. We're taught to stay quiet, to be polite, to not rock the boat. We're told that standing up for ourselves is selfish, that saying enough makes us difficult. So instead, we endure, we shrink, we rationalize behavior that disrespects us, and little by little we lose pieces of ourselves. But here's what nobody tells you. Every time you accept what's unacceptable, you make it acceptable. You give it a place in your life, and eventually that place grows. It becomes normal. It becomes your reality. Not because it's right, but because you never said no. Think about that. How many times have you been uncomfortable but stayed silent? How many times have you been hurt, disrespected, overlooked, but still try to keep the peace? You weren't being weak. You were being conditioned. Conditioned to tolerate what should have been rejected. Conditioned to believe that your voice doesn't matter as much as someone else's comfort. But you have to understand this. What you tolerate, you invite. What you allow, continues. And sooner or later, the pain of staying silent becomes heavier than the fear of speaking up. There is a version of you, stronger, freer, bolder, waiting on the other side of one decision, the decision to no longer tolerate what damages your soul. It's not about becoming aggressive. It's about becoming honest. It's about drawing the line, even if your voice shakes when you say it. Because nothing will ever change if you keep letting the same patterns play out. You don't rise by chance. You rise by choice. And that choice begins with what you no longer accept. You have dreams, you have goals, you have a future that's calling you, but none of it will fully arrive until you clear the space for it. That means protecting your time, protecting your energy, protecting your standards, and most importantly, protecting your self-respect. Because self-respect isn't built in moments of ease. It's built in moments of decision. It's when you finally say, this is not okay with me. It's when you stop explaining your worth to people who don't see it. It's when you stop giving chances to people who only take advantage. And it's when you finally understand that peace is more important than pleasing. The life you want doesn't come from tolerating everything. It comes from choosing what deserves a seat at your table and what doesn't. And yes, that's hard. Yes, you'll face resistance. You'll be misunderstood. You'll lose people. But you will find something far greater, yourself. This isn't just about avoiding pain. It's about claiming power. It's about rewriting the story. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't just survive, but thrives. Someone who walks with clarity, with confidence, with conviction. Someone who knows that protecting your peace is not selfish. It's necessary. Because if you don't guard your life, no one else will. If you don't say this stops here, it will continue. And if you keep waiting for the world to respect you before you respect yourself, you'll wait forever. The change begins now. It begins with awareness, with honesty, with courage. You don't need permission to raise your standards. You don't need approval to walk away from what no longer serves you. You just need one thing, a decision. A decision to no longer live at the mercy of what drains you. A decision to take your power back. And if you stay with this message to the end, you'll discover the exact behaviors that have been silently sabotaging your growth and why refusing to tolerate them anymore will transform your life. Not someday, not eventually, today. Because the moment you stop accepting less, the world starts giving you more. And once you make the decision to raise your standards, everything around you starts to shift. But here's where it gets real. When you finally begin to protect your peace, some people won't like it. Especially the ones who benefited from your silence. Especially the ones who treated you as a target under the disguise of humor. There's a certain kind of behavior that's often brushed off, laughed at, and even encouraged by others. Disrespect dressed up as a joke. Sarcasm that stings. Comments that hit too deep but are excused with a casual, relax, I'm just playing. That's not humor. That's humiliation disguised as entertainment. And when it's consistent, it's emotional erosion. You feel it, don't you? That sinking feeling when someone throws a jab and everyone laughs, but deep down you feel small. You feel exposed. You feel ridiculed in front of people who should have stood by you. And yet you smile. You pretend it didn't matter, because speaking up would ruin the vibe. You don't want to seem sensitive, so you carry the bruise in silence. But that silence isn't harmless. That silence becomes self-doubt. It becomes shame. You begin to question your own worth. You wonder if maybe you're just being dramatic. Maybe you're overreacting. And that's exactly how the cycle continues, through your silence. Let this be your wake-up call. If someone consistently jokes in a way that makes you feel less, it's not a joke, it's emotional disrespect. And the moment you allow it, you teach them it's okay. You teach them that your feelings are secondary, that your dignity is negotiable. But your dignity is not up for debate. You have every right to be taken seriously, to be spoken to with respect, to exist without being mocked, belittled, or turned into someone's punchline. And the people who truly respect you will never feel the need to tear you down to get a laugh. They'll never build their confidence on the wreckage of yours. You weren't made to be silent while others trample your worth. You weren't meant to bite your tongue every time someone crosses the line, because when you do, the line keeps moving, and eventually there's no line left. It's time to reclaim that line. To say no more, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with power, with clarity, with the quiet strength of someone who finally knows their value. The moment you call out disguised disrespect, you break the spell, you take control, you shift the dynamic, and most importantly, you send a message, not just to them, but to yourself. I will not be disrespected and then expected to smile. This is not about confrontation for the sake of conflict. This is about protecting your emotional environment, because your mental health depends on it. Because your confidence depends on it. Because the version of you that you're becoming cannot thrive in a space where you're constantly shrinking. Every time you laugh at a joke that hurts just to keep the peace, you abandon a piece of yourself. And the longer you do that, the harder it becomes to recognize who you are. But the moment you choose to stand up for your dignity, you start building something stronger than peace. You build self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of every great life. This world will try to test your limits. People will try to blur the boundaries. But it's not their job to protect your energy, it's yours. It's your responsibility to stop giving your presence to those who insult you in the name of fun. To stop giving chances to those who confuse cruelty with charisma. You owe yourself more than that. You owe yourself kindness, real kindness, and that starts with how you allow others to treat you. When you make this shift, the right people begin to show up. People who see you not as a target, but as a treasure. People who don't need to mock you to feel powerful. People who honor your presence and never laugh at your pain. And when those people come, you'll realize something powerful. You were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. So let this be your moment. The moment you stop laughing at what hurts. The moment you stop letting disrespect slide because it's wrapped in a joke. The moment you start speaking up, not with rage, but with resolve. Because you deserve more than tolerance. You deserve respect. And respect begins with how you teach the world to treat you. If you're ready to reclaim your power, it begins here, with the courage to say, this is not funny to me, with the strength to protect your peace even when it's uncomfortable. Because when you stop accepting hidden disrespect, you start attracting real connection. That's when life begins to shift. That's when you rise. Once you begin demanding respect, you start seeing who was never truly for you. Not everyone will celebrate your strength. Some will call it an attitude. Some will say you've changed. And they're right. You have. You've stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. You've stopped allowing subtle jabs and fake laughter to fill your space. But there's another behavior just as toxic, just as damaging. One that doesn't come with loud insults but with quiet control. Emotional manipulation. It doesn't always look obvious. It rarely starts with shouting. Most of the time, it's soft. It's guilt. It's passive-aggressive silence. It's the heavy sighs, the shifting blame, the phrases like, after everything I've done for you, or I guess you don't care anymore. It's the kind of pressure that makes you second-guess your decisions and feel wrong for choosing yourself. And if you've ever felt guilty for putting up a boundary, if you've ever said no and then felt like you were the bad person for it, you know exactly how this feels. Emotional manipulators are experts at turning your strength into shame. They twist your compassion into a weakness and make you feel responsible for their moods, their reactions, their problems. They never take ownership. They'd rather play the victim and watch you carry the weight that was never yours to begin with. But here's the truth. You are not responsible for other people's happiness. You are not selfish for protecting your energy. And you are not cold for walking away from emotional games. You've been taught that love means sacrifice, that loyalty means staying no matter what. But real love doesn't punish you for having needs. Real loyalty doesn't require you to suffer in silence. Manipulation thrives where there is fear. Fear of losing people, fear of disappointing others, fear of being misunderstood. But your peace is more valuable than someone else's comfort. Every time you say yes out of guilt, you build a life you secretly resent. Every time you silence your voice to keep the peace, you disconnect from your own truth. And eventually, you forget how to trust yourself. That's the real damage of manipulation. It doesn't just confuse your mind, it fractures your identity. But you can reclaim it. You reclaim it by recognizing that guilt is not always a sign of doing something wrong. Sometimes it's the feeling that rises when you do something right for yourself, after years of doing everything for others. Sometimes guilt shows up not because you're cruel, but because you're finally breaking the pattern that's been breaking you. And that's not weakness. That's healing. The people who truly care about you will never use guilt as a weapon. They won't need to twist your emotions to get their way. They'll respect your no just as much as your yes. They'll understand that love without freedom is control, and love with control is not love at all. So ask yourself, how much of your energy has been spent managing someone else's emotions? How much of your time has been devoted to fixing problems you didn't create? How many times have you felt exhausted, not because of what you're doing, but because of what you're constantly tolerating? You weren't made to be someone's emotional sponge. You weren't made to carry weight that was never yours. Your soul wasn't designed to live in guilt. It was made for peace, for clarity, for strength. And it's time you step into that truth fully. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your space. You don't need to defend your boundaries to people who benefit from crossing them. You don't need to prove your worth by overgiving, over-apologizing, or overextending. What you need is alignment. What you need is honesty. What you need is the courage to say, this behavior isn't healthy for me, and mean it, even if it means walking away. Because when you stop allowing guilt to guide your decisions, you start building a life that's honest. A life where you wake up with energy instead of anxiety. A life where you feel connected instead of controlled. A life that reflects who you truly are, not who others have pressured you to be. This is your moment to take the power back. Not by yelling, not by fighting, but by choosing peace over manipulation, clarity over confusion, and truth over guilt. You don't need to be anything other than exactly who you are, without fear of being punished for it. That's freedom. That's strength. That's the life you were meant to live. And once you stop tolerating emotional manipulation, you begin to experience what it means to be truly free. And in that freedom, you will rise. When you finally free yourself from guilt and manipulation, something powerful begins to happen. You begin to see just how much of your life was lived on someone else's terms. How many dreams you delayed to make others comfortable. How many moments you suppressed your truth just to avoid conflict. But there's another hidden behavior, quiet, calculated, and deeply toxic, that must be brought into the light. Chronic criticism. It doesn't always come with shouting. It often arrives in subtle comments. The constant correction, the sigh before they speak, the backhanded compliments that feel more like insults, the disapproving looks, the repeated reminders that you're not doing it right, that you always mess it up, or that you're never enough. It chips away at your confidence. One word at a time. One raised eyebrow, one sarcastic remark. It creates a voice in your mind that no longer needs the critic present, because now you've become your own. And that is the deepest damage of all. When someone constantly criticizes you, it rewires how you see yourself. You start to expect failure. You question your own instincts. You overthink every decision, every word, every move, because you've been taught that whatever you do, it won't be good enough. But here's what you must remember. No one gets to define your worth. No one has the authority to speak over your potential unless you hand them the mic. And just because someone doesn't recognize your value doesn't mean it's not there. It just means they were never meant to hold your mirror. Some people criticize because they are insecure. Others do it to feel powerful. Either way, it's not your responsibility to absorb their projections. Their inability to celebrate you is not a reflection of your flaws. It's a reflection of their fears. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy. You don't need to earn someone's approval by constantly bending, fixing, and apologizing for who you are. Real growth doesn't come from shame. It comes from encouragement, from truth, from the kind of feedback that lifts you, not breaks you. And yes, there's a difference between constructive feedback and chronic criticism. One helps you grow, the other keeps you small. One empowers, the other imprisons. And when someone repeatedly chooses to focus only on your flaws while ignoring your efforts, they're not helping you improve. They're conditioning you to doubt yourself. You don't rise by living under a microscope. You rise by stepping into spaces that allow you to breathe, to learn, to become. Spaces that offer grace instead of judgment, that offer support instead of scrutiny. You may have spent years being told you're too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic, too much. But what if the truth is this? You were just too aware to stay quiet, too conscious to ignore what others accepted. too full of potential to keep playing small, and that scared them. So they tried to reduce you, but you are not here to be reduced. You're here to become, to evolve, to walk into your calling without shrinking every time someone raises an eyebrow, to stop apologizing for who you are and start affirming who you're becoming. Because you don't owe anyone the smaller version of yourself just to make them feel comfortable. You were never too much. You were just around people who were too little to handle your light. It's time to silence the critics, not by fighting, not by explaining, but by rising. Let your growth be the response. Let your peace be the proof. Let your confidence become so unshakable that no amount of criticism can reach what you've rebuilt within. You no longer need to internalize the words of those who never saw your heart. Their judgments are not your truth. Their opinions are not your identity. And their constant picking apart of your efforts? That's not clarity, it's control. Walk away from environments that starve your spirit. Step out of cycles where your best is never enough. You are not here to be tolerated, you are here to be celebrated. And if someone cannot appreciate your value, that is their limitation, not yours. You've spent long enough letting critics dim your fire. Now it's time to protect it, to feed it, to let it burn through the doubt, the shame, the years of second guessing. Because on the other side of criticism, when you no longer let it shape you, is a version of you that is unstoppable. Own your power, own your voice. And most of all, own your right to live free of chronic negativity. That's not just self-care, that's self-respect. And once you claim it, you rise into a life where no one's opinion holds more weight than your own truth. And when you finally stop letting constant criticism rewrite your identity, something inside begins to shift. You start hearing your own voice again, the one that was silenced for so long beneath the weight of doubt. You begin to realize just how far you've come, not because others approved of you, but because you chose to keep moving forward even when they didn't. But there's still one more silent destroyer that must be faced before real growth can take hold, one behavior that poisons every environment it touches and suffocates the soul in silence. Passive aggression. It doesn't scream. It doesn't explode. It whispers behind closed doors. It shows up in fake smiles, in delayed replies, in cold shoulders and silent treatments that punish without explanation. It hides behind phrases like, "I'm fine," when nothing is fine. It says, "Do whatever you want," with a tone that tells you exactly what not to do. It doesn't express, it manipulates. This kind of behavior is deeply harmful because it leaves no clear evidence, no loud arguments, no harsh words, just emotional tension that slowly wears you down. You begin to feel like you're walking on glass. One wrong move, one misunderstood sentence, and you're shut out again. Not with words, but with withdrawal. You're not given a chance to talk, you're given punishment without trial. And it's confusing, it's exhausting, it's emotional warfare disguised as subtlety. Passive aggression trains you to fear honesty. It teaches you that expressing your thoughts might lead to silence, distance, or quiet revenge. You begin to suppress yourself, not because you don't have anything to say, but because you're tired of the consequences that come with speaking. But you were not born to be emotionally tiptoeing through relationships. You were not made to decode moods, to solve puzzles every time someone chooses to stay silent rather than speak. That's not love. That's control. When people refuse to communicate directly, they shift the burden onto you. You become the one trying to fix, to guess, to smooth things over. You become responsible for feelings they won't even name. That imbalance isn't just unfair. It's unsustainable. Real connection cannot exist without clear communication. Passive aggression kills trust because it's rooted in fear. It avoids vulnerability. It avoids conflict. But in doing so, it creates emotional distance far more damaging than any honest disagreement ever could. You deserve relationships where people speak truth, not hide it, where emotions are processed, not weaponized, where tension is addressed with courage, not coded in bitterness. Being emotionally mature means saying what you feel without making someone else pay for it in silence. It means facing discomfort with honesty instead of masking it with sarcasm or avoidance. And it means creating spaces where safety comes not from walking on eggshells, but from knowing that truth can exist without punishment. If you've ever been on the receiving end of passive aggression, you know the emotional toll it takes. It makes you feel like the villain, even when you've done nothing wrong. It leaves you questioning what you said, what you missed, what you should have done differently. That mental exhaustion is not yours to carry. You can't fix what someone refuses to admit. You can't connect with someone who uses silence as a weapon. And you can't grow in an environment where emotions are buried instead of brought into the light. You are allowed to expect directness. You are allowed to ask for clarity. You are allowed to say, if something is wrong, talk to me, not around me. And if someone refuses to meet you there, if they continue to punish instead of communicate, you have every right to walk away with your peace intact. Because peace is not the absence of noise, it's the presence of truth. The strongest people are not those who avoid confrontation, but those who are brave enough to speak with kindness, to express without attacking, to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. And the strongest relationships are built on that same courage. You don't have to tolerate emotional games. You don't have to decode mixed signals. You don't have to sacrifice your mental clarity to keep the illusion of peace alive. Your time is too valuable, your spirit is too sacred, and your journey is too important to be held back by someone who won't even name the problem. Let today be the day you stop interpreting silence as love. Let today be the day you say, I deserve openness. I deserve realness. I deserve connection rooted in clarity, not confusion. And if someone can't give you that, let them go without guilt. Because you are building something stronger than just appearances. You are building a life where truth flows freely, where connection feels safe, and where love speaks, not hides. That's how you rise, not by tolerating emotional fog, but by choosing the light. And the moment you do, everything begins to clear. When the fog of emotional confusion begins to lift, you start realizing how much of your energy was spent trying to maintain peace with people who thrive on silence, not solutions. And once you stop tolerating passive aggression, you start demanding truth, not as a luxury, but as a non-negotiable. That clarity begins to sharpen your vision. It helps you see what once felt normal was actually never okay. And one of the most damaging behaviors hiding in plain sight is entitlement. Entitlement is a silent thief. It shows up wrapped in expectation but reveals itself through disrespect. It's the belief that someone deserves your time, your effort, your kindness, without earning it, without reciprocating it, without appreciating it. It's when someone assumes you owe them simply because of who they are to you. They don't ask, they demand. They don't say thank you, they act like your support is a duty, not a gift. And the more you give, the more they expect. The more available you are, the less they value your presence. Entitlement doesn't recognize effort. It only sees what's missing. It never pauses to acknowledge what you've sacrificed. It only keeps taking, assuming you'll always show up, always say yes, always bend. But love without appreciation becomes labor. And giving without being seen becomes draining. You are not here to serve someone's ego. You are not a background character in someone else's story. You are not required to keep proving your worth to someone who sees your generosity as a guarantee instead of a gift. Entitlement is dangerous because it flips the script. It makes you feel selfish for wanting rest. It makes you feel guilty for setting limits. It paints you as the problem the moment you stop giving endlessly. And that's the trap. The moment you stop overextending, they start accusing. Not because you did something wrong, but because you finally chose yourself. But choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's essential. Because a relationship built on one-sided expectations will eventually collapse under the weight of imbalance. And the longer you tolerate entitlement, the more you teach people that your boundaries are negotiable, your energy is unlimited, and your needs don't matter. The truth is, you deserve mutuality. You deserve to receive with the same heart you give. You deserve to be around people who see your presence as a privilege, not a convenience. You deserve relationships where respect is not begged for. It's automatic. You are not obligated to over-explain why you're tired. You don't need to justify your limits. You don't owe your time to anyone who treats it like it's disposable. Your worth is not measured by how much you do for others. It's measured by how boldly you protect your peace, even when that means disappointing people who are only around for what you could offer them. Some people won't like your boundaries. Some will call it rude, distant, or cold. But that's because entitlement dies in the presence of self-respect. And when you stop handing out access freely, the people who only came to take will be the loudest to complain. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them misunderstand you. Because peace is not about keeping everyone happy, it's about staying aligned with your truth. You're not here to be drained, you're here to be driven, to pour into people who pour back, to build with those who bring value, not just demands. And the more you protect yourself from entitled energy, the more space you create for real connection, built on gratitude, not expectation. Start noticing who claps when you win, who checks in when you're quiet, who says thank you without being prompted. These are the people who deserve your energy. not those who expect you to carry the weight of the world and still smile as if nothing hurts. You deserve more than silent assumptions. You deserve to be appreciated loudly, consistently, genuinely. So don't apologize for reclaiming your time. Don't explain your worth to people who refuse to see it. And don't dim your light just to make room for those who are too entitled to appreciate its warmth. You're not asking for too much. You're asking the wrong people. Because the right people will never make you feel guilty for needing rest, for saying no, or for putting your own growth first. They won't drain you. They'll drive you. They won't expect. They'll contribute. And they'll remind you every day that your worth is not based on how much you give, but on who you are. This is your reminder to stop feeding the entitled and start feeding your soul. You are not a resource to be used. You are a life to be respected. And from this moment on, you no longer entertain anything less. When you finally stop entertaining the entitled, something powerful begins to unfold. You start making space for your own needs, your own growth, your own healing. You begin to realize that constantly overextending yourself for people who only see you as a source, not a soul, has been draining the life out of you. And in that realization, there's a quiet strength, a clarity that whispers, no more. No more sacrificing your peace to keep people comfortable. No more shrinking to fit into spaces where your presence is taken for granted. No more tolerating behavior that chips away at your self-worth. And if there's one more behavior that must never be excused, it's chronic disrespect. Disrespect doesn't always come with raised voices. It doesn't always show up in harsh insults. Sometimes it arrives in subtle ways, being interrupted constantly, being ignored when you speak, having your boundaries dismissed as overreactions. Sometimes it's the joke made at your expense, the eye roll when you express a dream, the silence that follows your success. Disrespect is often quiet, but its impact is loud, and it leaves you questioning your value in places where you should feel most secure. You are not difficult for expecting to be treated with basic dignity. You are not too sensitive for recognizing the difference between lighthearted teasing and subtle belittling. You are not too much for demanding respect in every room you enter. You are enough exactly as you are, and you never have to apologize for requiring others to see that. Respect is not optional. It's not something people earn over time. It's the foundation, the minimum, and anyone who withholds it to gain control, to keep you small, to assert dominance, they are not worthy of your time, your effort, or your energy. The truth is, you teach people how to treat you by what you allow. And every time you tolerate disrespect in silence, it becomes a signal. A message that says it's okay to treat me this way. But you are not here to be a placeholder for someone's immaturity. You are not a punching bag for someone else's insecurity. You are not meant to lower your standards just to avoid conflict. The cost of staying quiet is your self-respect. And the longer you swallow your voice, the harder it becomes to recognize yourself in the mirror. You start accepting things that once made your spirit ache. You start normalizing behaviors that once would have made you walk away. And over time, the disrespect that once stung starts to feel familiar. But familiar does not mean acceptable. Familiar is often just the repeated wound you haven't healed yet. And healing begins when you stop making excuses for people who make you feel small. It begins when you look in the mirror and remind yourself that your value is not up for debate, that your presence is not a favor someone is doing you, that your feelings are valid, your time is sacred, and your voice deserves to be heard without interruption. You deserve to be in rooms where your thoughts are not dismissed, where your dreams are not mocked, where your growth is not viewed as a threat. You deserve to be surrounded by people who uplift, not undermine, who celebrate, not compete, who honor your presence, not exploit it. You are allowed to demand more, to draw the line where dignity begins, to say, if you cannot speak to me with respect, you do not get access to me at all. And that boundary is not harsh. It's healthy. It's necessary. Because nothing flourishes in soil poisoned by disrespect. Not love, not trust, not self-worth. Let it be known, your silence is no longer a permission slip for mistreatment. Your peace is no longer negotiable. And your standards are not up for compromise. If someone can't rise to meet you with respect, let them stay where they are and keep walking. Every time you choose respect, you reinforce your own worth. Every time you say no to disrespect, you say yes to the life you were meant to live. One rooted in honor, clarity, and strength. You break the cycle. You reclaim your voice. You remind the world that you're not here to be tolerated, you're here to be valued. And the more you step into that truth, the more unstoppable you become. You begin to attract what you reflect. You start building a circle where respect is given freely, where encouragement replaces criticism. and where your worth is never in question. You become the example, the standard, the reminder that boundaries are not walls, they are doors to better. And this is your door. This is your moment to walk through it. Because the life you're meant to live can't begin until the life you're tolerating ends. And the moment you stop accepting disrespect, everything changes. Your energy, your focus, your power. You're not here to fit into small spaces. You're here to grow, to rise, to walk boldly in your truth. Respect isn't a reward, it's the minimum, and you're done settling for less.